What is happening, y'all? Cowboy here, back with more exclusive new Wo Long gameplay. So if you didn't see the other video, I had a chance to go on out to San Francisco. Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja brought me on out to check the current build of the game. Played a demo section and fought a new boss, tested out new mechanics, etc. If you're curious about the overall changes and whatnot, I would suggest checking out that video. But this one, we are going to be talking about the potential build diversity for the game. Because in playing, I had a chance to test quite a few things, and I found some stuff that's pretty busted, I think, in the right hands. So, in the demo we played, we capped out at a max fortitude rank, or a morale rank, of 5. In the demo back from September, it went up to 20, whereas here they capped things out to 5. So just to kind of put that in perspective, basically I was at, quote, max morale in a quarter of the time. And this was just because, we only had an hour to really play around with the demo, and there was limited time availability. But what it did do is it offered me the chance to test out a bunch of stuff from a mechanical standpoint that I didn't have as much time to spend with in the previous demo. One of those things being, can we do a build entirely around martial arts or entirely around magic? And so that is what we're going to be looking at in this video. So when it comes to martial arts, there is some pretty insane stuff that you're able to do with certain weapons. I found certain weapons that have a very advanced focused reuse. Those will certainly work. I think this might have actually been the magic build, just looking at me nuking stuff with spells, but I remember switching it up later. So both of these are kind of just going to bleed together, but certain abilities in the game that are advanced centric, such as the double advancing attack with the dual blades, you are able to basically use them over and over and over again. And while it does build up your spirit, it's going to cost resource. With the right setup and enough martial art spirit cost reduction, as well as martial art damage amplification, you can effectively create builds in this that are going to be very similar to skill damage builds from Nioh. Now, talking about Nioh briefly, you had your basic attacks, and then you had skills. Skills you picked up in the weapon tree, and they were usually specific to the stance, and there were some that were like really, really strong. For example, the spin to win ability with the axe. There were entire skill builds based around amplifying the damage of that one ability. There were a lot of katana builds that focused around the EI slash, which was like the sheath and attack. There were builds that focused around a lot of the dual blade abilities, where they were multi-hit, and the idea is you put an enemy into the corner and then juggle them. Well, in this game, at least from what we've seen so far with the various status fixes, stats tend to lean towards just straight martial arts boosts. And what this means is, as opposed to getting an item that has a skill boost for a specific skill, like, oh, this boosts that one dual blade skill you like, all martial arts abilities are going to be boosted. Now, this is pretty nice because from a quality of life perspective, it's going to be significantly easier to put builds like this together. And what's so nice about this is, back in Nioh 2, trying to do a skill build early on was actually really hard, because you had to find the fixes for your particular skill. So for example, if you wanted to do a spin to win build, you had to find gear that amplified the damage of whirlwind. And you would get whirlwind up, like, I don't know, 15 to 20% per piece of gear. But the thing is, now we're going to have that bonus go to all martial arts. So instead of our gear being like 15 to 20% whirlwind, it's just going to be 15 to 20% to martial arts, which is fantastic, because it means if you're using one particular skill and then you're like, you know what, I don't think I like this skill as much anymore, or you get a new weapon, which is even more important because skills are tied on weapons, you're going to be able to transition into a different skill and still maintain the damage bonuses that you had previously. You'll still be able to do just as much damage as you were, and that's really important. So right here, this was one of my first attempts at it. This was using a amplification ability. So what that ability would do is it would increase the damage that I did with that particular skill, which it kind of worked okay. But I don't think it was the best. That firewall thing, though, that's super crazy. I mean, that's definitely going to be going in the mage build, which we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. But what's great about this is I was able to take this build and instantly transition this into different weapons, into different weapons within the same category. Pretty much anything that was going to be focused around spamming those martial arts skills, which are obviously flashy and they do a lot of damage. You know, I don't think we've had this kind of freedom before. I guess to put it in Elden Ring terms, it's, you know, it would almost be like having a build that's entirely around using the Ashes of War system, but being able to just freely swap between different weapons and different Ashes of War, which was super cool. Now, obviously, you know, weapon scaling does need to be taken into account. There are going to be certain weapons that this is going to work better with than others, simply because of the fact that those weapons are going to scale with the stats that have innate bonuses to the martial arts damage. But regardless, this does seem like it could be a completely viable playstyle, and definitely one that's really cool. I mean, as you can see, I think that was probably the cleanest kill that I'd gotten on the rat. Just absolutely tore that thing up, you know, super flashy, tons of damage going on out. And I think at this point I was actually trying to just power level my guy up. I think I was trying to get myself up to like 10 morale to see how goofy I could get prior to the boss fight. But it also gave me a chance to kind of mess around with the spear a little bit more. There was one spear weapon ability that I was playing around with that was pretty OP. I was able to effectively juggle enemies with it, but I think I actually do it right here. No, not that one. Okay, maybe it's later in the video. But I was able to like put an enemy into a corner and just be like boom, 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 and just keep twirling the spear. And as I twirled it, I continued to juggle an enemy around and just, you know, continually do damage to them. But the big thing that surprised me was when I discovered this little trick, which was just using a chain ability that I could spam. Now, you have to also be very good at hitting, basically getting off your parries, because you need a way to rapidly build the gauge up. But I found that you could basically just spam this ability over and over and over again. And it wasn't just this ability. There were abilities that you could do with the single sword as well. And as you can see, like, my gauge is going up. So this it is costing a resource to do, but it ended up doing some pretty crazy damage. Just based on the discussions that we had at the event, I'm not sure if something like this would get nerfed. I could tell the creative director had a chuckle about it. He was kind of like, all right, he was like, you know, we didn't even expect something like this, which is, you know, why it's cool to have events like that, because there's, you know, stuff that, you know, they just might not know about that suddenly comes to light. But at the same time, I mean, it does cost spirit. So this was a build that was designed to reduce the spirit usage and how expensive it was to do moves. And because of that, I was able to do this playstyle that typically otherwise wouldn't be viable. So obviously getting off deflects helps a ton, because I'm able to instantly get my meter back. So you see that, get off that one deflect, that got like half my meter right there. And then instantly just boop. And I can do that enough and build up enough spirit damage to then put the target down into a critical state. What I think was the funniest thing about this, though, was just, you know, seeing the reaction from the devs. They did not expect, they didn't even know I could do this kind of jankiness in their game. So definitely pretty funny, kind of seeing them be like, wait, what is even happening right now? So got some good chuckles out of that. And of course, the final test, was this viable against a boss? In particular, I want to call out his spirit gauge, the gauge that's below his health. See just how fast that is getting filled up, and this poor thing is being put into a stagger state. Now, while the martial arts build is obviously fantastic, I also wanted to test out a wizardry build, and yes, they can do insane amounts of damage. And this is something that in particular I'm really excited for, because we had Omeo builds in Nioh 2, but for the most part, Omeo builds were about applying the element to the enemy. In terms of just like doing raw damage with your spells, even in a late game scenario, ninjutsu builds pushed out more elemental damage than Omeo builds, which was, it was kind of, I mean, let's be honest, it was disappointing. It was disappointing that ninja scrolls would do more elemental damage than actual elemental damage magic scrolls. And what's nice here is basically all the issues we had with Omeo are addressed with this new system, because our spells and the casts of those spells function with the spirit system. So as we're playing well and we're building up spirit, that is being spent on additional casts. You know, just the spirit itself. Basically, as long as I get off parries, I can continually cast spells, and I don't need to worry about my spells running out or having a certain amount that I'm not going to have available. And that was another big problem with what we experienced back in Nioh, is, you know, eventually you'd run out of scrolls, and then you had to use consumables to get back the stuff so that you could actually keep casting your spells. And so what's nice here is, obviously, I'm not attacking at all. I wanted to see just how much damage I could do almost purely through the spells. But if I were to weave attacking into this, between attacking, getting a parry here or there to keep my spirit gauge up, I could do almost all of my damage purely through spellcast. And we obviously have the advantage in this game of being able to switch schools and whatnot. So, like, you know, you're fighting a guy like this who's more aligned with fire, you can use ice. The next fight, if you're fighting a guy that's aligned with, aligned with wood, you can use fire. So we're going to be able to freely change the elements that we want. And as long as we have the morale score, we're going to be able to use those abilities. And this is something that I just found really cool. Like, honestly, I think for my own personal playthrough, I might end up actually doing a wizardry build for like the very first playthrough of the game, just because this was so cool to me. Because it's the fact that we can freely swap around those elements. There's a lot of really badass spells. We have stuff that's like, with what I was doing here, I was throwing out the ground to keep him slowed, and then while he was stuck in that muck, I was then following up with the ice, which would freeze him down, obviously take advantage of the large size of the character to get multi-hits. You can see under the spirit bar, so you have health, spirit, and then you can see debuffs. We're actually applying various elemental debuffs to him as this fight goes on. So, you know, long story short, this game is looking really good for launch right now. I'm very happy with what I saw in terms of elemental capabilities. I'm really happy with what I saw in terms of martial art capabilities, and yeah, I think this has done a good job as solidifying itself as one of my most anticipated games for 2023. So thanks for coming on by and checking it out. Let me know what you guys think. I don't know if we're going to get another demo of this. I hope we do, just so y'all can experience it the same way I did. But either way, rest assured, this is looking like it is going to be real good when it comes out.